Kristen, thank you. It's a minute past the hour now. There are some new facts this morning about the man who police say harassed several people on the CNM campus. Police are searching for him this morning. Sources tell News 13 that man shouldn't have been on the campus in the first place and had already been banned. We also know the victims are all women and students, and none of the women knew him. We spoke with one victim who told us this.
He looked like a fellow student. He had a backpack on. He was smiling. I didn't really think much of it.
On Tuesday night, those women were walking to class just before 6 in the evening when they say a man approached them. Sources tell News 13 each victim says he grabbed them, trying to hug them. Two say he bit them. All of the attacks happened in a 10-minute span. CNM officials will only say 4 people were physically harassed, but the college did send out a text alert to warn people and says it did not involve any sexual assaults. Some, though, say it was so vague it left them confused.
Where it was at. That to me is a big thing of knowing where it was at, you know, so people can like be in groups or something like that.
APD tells News 13 they do have a possible suspect and they were waiting for victims to identify him. When arrested, the man faces misdemeanor battery charges and will likely face trespassing charges for being on campus after he was banned.
Happening today at a time when APD is trying to repair its reputation with the public, a former APD officer is set to speak today on a lecture about police violence in Albuquerque. Retired Officer Samson Costellas will be speaking at the Police Violence and Social Control Lecture Series on UNM campus today. The lecture he will be speaking at is titled "The Pattern of Police Violence in Albuquerque." This, of course, comes at a time when APD is trying to rebuild its relationship with the community after a scathing DOJ report. So what will he be speaking about exactly, and what does APD think about this lecture that is open to the public? We'll have that part of the story in our next half hour.
An Albuquerque workplace shooting is getting some national attention on a new TV show. Carl Knapp is serving 76 years for murdering his ex-girlfriend and 2 other people.
In September 2002, Jane tried to break away from Carl again. This time, he slashed her tires and left death threats on her phone.
Knapp had been dating Jane Johnston for nearly 3 years. After they broke up, police say he rammed her car and threatened her. Soon after, Knapp stormed her workplace, shot and killed her, and then gunned down 2 men who were trying to protect her. Knapp shot himself, but survived. The host of the show, Mind of a Murderer, interviewed Knapp in jail for the show. He does not show remorse, talking instead about his head injuries.
I've been run over 3 different times on a motorcycle, all by drunk drivers. First time I had a skull fracture.
The Mind of a Murderer featuring Knapp airs tomorrow night at 8 on Investigation ID.
A Santa Fe teen is facing charges this morning. His baby remains in critical condition. This after police say he shook his 5-week-old son because he would not stop crying. The family took the infant to Christus St. Vincent Regional Medical Center on Monday after they noticed the baby was purple and gasping for air. Doctors say a CT scan showed signs of shaken baby syndrome. He was then rushed to UNM Hospital. The father, 17-year-old Javier Chavez, said he took the baby's 16-year-old mom to school and could not handle his son's crying. Chavez was arrested and charged with child abuse resulting in great bodily harm.
5:04 this morning, Governor Susana Martinez is pushing 2 bills supporting CYFD workers. The first would create stiffer penalties for people who assault child abuse investigators. Under the current law, if somebody attacks a CYFD employee, it doesn't rise to the same level as someone who attacks a paramedic, a school employee, or sports officials like a ref or an umpire. The governor says being a caseworker at CYFD is just as tough.
We think that what you do is important. And that's why we want to make sure that people know, do not touch our social workers. They do very important work, and they deserve the protection of the law.
The governor is also pushing a student loan repayment program for case workers who stay with CYFD for at least 5 years. The goal is to attract workers and keep current employees.
APS is looking at a high school schedule change that could save the district millions. Here's how it would work. Students would either start an hour later or leave an hour earlier 1 or 2 days each week. Teachers would have less time during the school day to prepare lessons and collaborate with other teachers. Because they would be teaching more, the district says they would need fewer teachers to teach high schoolers, saving the district an estimated $4.6 million a year. Right now, the district's looking at a possible $22 million shortfall, but some teachers are worried the proposal would take away time they use to make lessons better.
High-achieving countries that we are compared to, what they do differently than America is they give teachers an incredible amount of time to work together.
I don't know what the solution is, but if we need money, please, something else.
Now, the proposed plan is still in the very early stages. The district is looking to get more input from teachers themselves as well as you, the public.
The controversial PARCC test took center stage at last night's school board meeting. A lot of people are upset about the standardized test that started this week.
How are 4 years of hard work going to boil down to one test, and how is that going to affect our graduation?
So this is not a fair test for them to have to take, and I don't think it's fair that it's thrown at them at this stage.
Hundreds of students walked out on the PARCC test this week in protest. State's Education Secretary Hannah Scandera is defending the test, though, saying the challenge will be good for students in the long run.
Now it's 5:07. The president is sending his best wishes to the family of the ambassador of South Korea, Mark Lippert.
He's recovering after a knife attack in South Korea. Police say Lippert was about to deliver a speech when the man cut him. He was reportedly slashed in his face and arm. The department says Lippert's injuries are not life-threatening. He's stable in the hospital. Police say one man was detained after the attack. According to Korean news agency, he was demanding a unified North and South Korea at the time of the attack. A Michigan bus driver faces about 90 days in jail after he was caught snoozing behind the wheel, and then this happened.
Yeah, take a look at this. It was all caught on surveillance video. You can see the 65-year-old. He dozes off, loses control of the bus, and plows into car after car. When he finally stopped, the crash scene spanned a half mile and involved 8 other vehicles. Somehow, the bus driver and his passenger were not seriously hurt, but people in the cars that were hit did suffer some injuries.
I can imagine. Good grief.
It's very terrifying.
Sounds good. Thanks, Krista. New details. Meantime, News 13 is learning about multiple attacks on the CNM campus. Police are searching for a man who harassed several people. Sources tell News 13 he should not have been on campus in the first place and had already been banned. We also know the victims are all women and students, and none of the women knew him. One of his victims, a CNM student who didn't want to be identified, says she was one of 4 women harassed on her way to class Tuesday night near Jeanette Stromberg Hall. She says all of the women had similar experiences. The man tried to hug or in some cases almost tackle them, and he even bit 2 of them.
I was just really surprised and shocked at the whole thing. I'm glad that nobody got severely hurt, but I haven't a clue what would cause somebody to act so crazy. I don't know.
APD says they do have a possible suspect and they're awaiting victims to identify him. He faces misdemeanor battery charges.
And we're staying on top of the investigation into shots fired at a Good Samaritan in Albuquerque. Police say they do have some leads. They're looking for 3 men who were catcalling a woman at the Valero gas station on Unser and McMahon last month. Police say when a man stepped in and confronted them, the trio chased him in their car, followed him down Unser and shot at him twice. Police say they hit the back of his car. Luckily, he was not hurt. Time now 6:33. A retired APD officer is speaking out against APD this morning.
It's not the first time he's come out speaking about police brutality. He was recently interviewed for articles featured in Rolling Stone magazine and The New Yorker. And this time, he's addressing the public at UNM to talk about the pattern of police violence in Albuquerque. News 13's Catherine Mazzone is live with more details on that this morning. Catherine.
Adam, the talk is part of a lecture series at UNM called Police Violence and Social Control. It comes months after a DOJ report revealed a pattern of violence within the department. So why now?
Every chance I get to speak out about police brutality and police corruption and police cover-up, I take that opportunity.
Retired APD officer Samson Costala says despite the DOJ report, he believes there are still issues within the department. Costales tells us he thinks the culture of APD and the mindset of Albuquerque police to cover for fellow officers still exists. He says he believes his 22 years of experience as a field officer will provide greater insight into why APD officers operate the way they do during certain situations. This is all information he'll provide at a lecture or question and answer session today.
It'll be beneficial for them to hear some of my stories about what went on behind the scenes of the police department and what actually is the mindset of a police officer.
Now, we reached out to APD to find out their take on the lecture series. Here's what they had to say. We respect everyone's right to have an opinion and share it with others. Our hope is that those who are most critical of our department will roll up their sleeves to be part of a solution in a productive manner. Now, that lecture today is from 2 to 3 this afternoon. Back to you.
All right, Catherine, thank you. APD also included a number of steps that they're taking to revamp the department and reach out to the community. One example including coffee with a cop. That was in November, where officers sort of sit down one-on-one for coffee with people, and community police. APD also has their interactive forum, Talk with a Cop, and collaborative roundtables. The Police Violence and Social Control Lecture Series is put on by somebody you may remember. It's Professor David Correa. Correa, as you may recall, has been very outspoken about the Albuquerque Police Department and its violence. Last August, charges were dropped after Correa allegedly shoved a cop during a protest at the mayor's office. He has also staged chaotic protests during city council meetings, protests that forced the council to reschedule.
Albuquerque police are using Twitter to take you on a virtual ride-along. Officers live tweeted during shifts last night in southeast Albuquerque using the hashtag #TweetFromTheBeat. They started at a traffic accident, then went to an armed robbery call where a man with a hatchet made off with cookies and a half-gallon of milk. Now, toward the end of the night, the officers responded to a family fight where they say almost everyone was drunk, arguing about whether or not they were family. They say they're doing this so people have a better understanding of what they deal with.
A lot of people think they know what goes on out on the streets of Albuquerque on a nightly basis, but this will actually give them a more in-depth look.
Word on when or if they will tweet during a shift again. And while most people on Twitter seem to be responding positively to Tweet from the Beat, others took the opportunity to yet again call attention to APD's well-known officer-involved shooting history. One person even suggesting that instead of tweeting their shift, officers live stream their lapel camera video. And another commenting on the name of the hashtag APD chose, asking if they meant to literally beat anyone. Tent City is back. This time people are set up at 2nd and Hazeldine, but APD says they're shutting down this one quickly. This is what it looked like at the new Tent City last night. You can see a few people milling around in a couple of tents. APD did respond after calls from neighbors last night and started handing out citations. APD says they will be clearing the area out this morning. This is the third spot the homeless have set up tents. The first near the rail yards was disbanded, and they were evicted from the second spot in the Borellis neighborhood.
Time at 6:37. A new cancer center celebrates a grand opening today in Albuquerque. The first cancer treatment center in the city begins serving more people starting today at Presbyterian Caseman Hospital. The center has been open since September, but under very strict hours. Patients can get peer support, try on wigs and scarves at the center. There's also a room funded by Nancy Floyd Hayworth Foundation called Nancy's Room. It's named after a 25-year-old New Mexican woman who died of breast cancer. Breast cancer patients will be able to receive free breast prosthesis and bras there. The center will now operate from 9 to 5 in the hospital. Let's turn to a live look in downtown Ferguson, Missouri, outside the police department, where at least one police employee has been fired, 3 others suspended after a scathing Justice Department report.
And that report has now led to a similar sight there yesterday, filled with protesters outraged at what was outlined in the report. According to the DOJ, the city engaged in systemic racism against its black residents. The report also says the court system there relied heavily on criminal fines and warrants to support itself. Officers even went as far as competing to see who could issue the most charges, earning the most money.
Onto this dramatic cell phone video captured a horrific scene outside a California Walmart. Authorities in Orange County say a woman was trapped inside as firefighters doused these flames. Witnesses say the driver got out and screamed for help, saying somebody was still inside. Rescuers were unable to get to the victim. A fire is now under investigation. Tragic end there.